Very good afternoon to one and all. Welcome back to the second session in day one of 5-day national workshop on advancement in antenna engineering using artificial intelligence. We have an eminent resource person, Dr. S.S. Karthikeyan sir with us. Dr. S.S. Karthikeyan sir received his BE degree in Electronics and Communication Engineering from Bharathidasan University, Tiruchirappalli, India. ME degree in Applied Electronics from Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology, India, and PhD degree from the Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, India. From December 2010 to August 2011, he worked as an assistant professor senior grade at Vellore Institute of Technology, Vellore, India. Following his PhD viva, he joined the Department of Electronics Engineering, Indian Institute of Information Technology, Design and Manufacturing, IIIT-DM, Kanchipuram, India. It is in August 2011. Currently, he is a faculty member of ECE Department, NIT Tiruchirappalli. His research areas include analysis and design of passive microwave devices with emphasis on dual band and wideband operation, printed antennas and arrays, frequency selective surfaces, and SIW-based devices and components. Dr. S.S. Karthikeyan sir has authored and co-authored over 70 international journals and conference papers in the areas of his research interest. Now I request Dr. S.S. Karthikeyan sir to take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Muthuramya, for your nice introduction. So let me share my PPTs, then we'll start our session.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, am I audible? Are you able to see my PPTs?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So very good afternoon to one and all. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to present this workshop on advanced antenna design using artificial intelligence. So really it is a hot time. Many of you are attending the sessions from your home. Probably you can smell your today's lunch preparation from your kitchen. So probably it may distract you. So I don't want to disturb you much. I just try to complete the session about 1 hour or 1 hour 15 minutes as early as possible, how I can quickly finish this. Today's topic is Introduction to Antennas and its Fundamental Parameters. Actually, the theme of the workshop is Advanced Antenna Design using Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence. Everyone will definitely agree that machine learning and artificial intelligence today drive the various sectors, right? It may be any technology area. Everybody is talk about always AI and machine learning. So this 5 days program is going to have a wonderful lectures from eminent professors and experts from various fields. So definitely you are going to learn many new things out of this workshop. But before learning any advanced concept, our fundamentals should be very strong, or we should be very much clear about the fundamentals. Then only you can learn advanced concept in this area. By keeping in mind, this lecture will give you a brief introduction about antennas and what are its principle and its application. Not only that, some of the fundamental parameters everybody must know to design and use the antenna for their application. The earliest antenna was introduced in the 19th century by the German physicist Heinrich Hertz. After that, Hertz was followed by a great theoretical investigation of the subject during the early to mid 20th century. The investigation proceeded with the development of computer-aided design tools during the 1970 to 2000, and nowadays it made this antenna design possibly by the development of powerful and affordable computing technology. Antenna applications are vast and very diverse. This include ranging from television and radio broadcasting, radar, wireless communication, Bluetooth enabled devices, military and personal communication devices, satellite communication, cell phones, RFID tag, and much more. So this talk mainly intends to cover the basic concept behind antennas, operation and performance. This talk aims to inform the reader on both the physical mechanism governing antenna operation as well as the various parameters compressing antenna specification. Let's start with the talk with a short physical introduction to the subject, followed by a more comprehensive and detailed review of the various antenna parameters.
Sir, sorry, sir.
Yeah, tell me, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. And information for participants.
Yeah, tell me, ma'am.
Participants, please pin the presentation. You will get the PPT. Participants, you can pin the presentation slides. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. The rigorous treatment of the subject actually requires an extensive mathematical background and is beyond the scope of the talk. So I carefully remove the much mathematics, complex mathematics involved in that, and just try to straight away discuss about the concept with the help of some diagram. That's it. So I am carefully avoiding the complex mathematics because it is an introduction lecture. Many of you might have gone through the antenna as one of the subjects during your UG or PG courses. So I don't want to go in detail. Many of the concepts are known to you. Just it is a refresh section. Just I am trying to recollect the points before making your journey into the advanced antenna design concept using AI. Okay. So I formed this talk starting with this wireless communication. We will be discussing about the history and evolution of the wireless communication and what are the basic building blocks of wireless communication system. Then we'll move on to the antennas introduction. What are the different type of antennas available based on the application, size, and so on. We will discuss about the classification. Then we will discuss about few of the important parameters for antenna design, and finally we can conclude the session. Let's start with the introduction. So what is communication system? Everybody knows that communication system is nothing but it is a system which can exchange the information between 2 points, transmitting point and receiving point. The information may be of either data or it may be a voice or video, whatever it is. Okay, so it is just mere the exchange of information between 2 points. We can simply call as communication. The system or a device which is responsible for establishing a communication among 2 points is called as communication system. We can broadly classify this communication into various types based on the type of signal involved, how the devices are connected in the communication system, like type of modulation involved. Like that, there are various classifications are available. One of the basic classification is based on the signal specification and technology. We can classify the communication system into 2 different types. One is analog communication, another one is digital communication system. In analog communication system, the data are electronic signals of varying frequency or amplitude. The examples of analog communication systems are broadcasting of telephone transmission. Suppose if it is a digital technology, we are using digital signal as a for. In digital signal, you know that there are only 2 states, high and low state. So all the informations are in the form of zeros and ones. And the communication system uses digital signal for its communication, right? Next, coming to the wired and wireless classification. So based on, depending on how the devices are connected with each other, whether there is a physical connection exists between the device or there is a wireless connection exists between the device. So based on that, we can classify the communication system into 2 different types: wired communication and wireless communication. In the case of wireless communication, wired communication, the communication devices are connected through physical wires. It may be of either coaxial cable or maybe optical fiber cable, or it may be a twisted pair cable, whatever it is. There exists a physical connection between the two devices or two or more devices. For example, transmitter and receiver. But in the case of wireless communication, normally we are going to exchange the information with the help of electromagnetic waves. Just we are trying to throw the energy or the information into a free space in the form of electromagnetic energy. The receiver will pick up that electromagnetic energy. Okay, so compared to the wired communication, the wireless communication has a lot of advantages. Okay, for example, before proceeding with the advantages of wireless communication, probably we can list out one or two uh, wireless communication system. So many of the devices we are using in our day-to-day life all are wireless only. For example, you can consider your cell phone, television, radio broadcasting, radar, wireless LAN, Wi-Fi signal, Bluetooth signal, cordless phones, radio frequency identification, RFID signal. So many things. Okay, it has very wide application from one place to another place. So there are varieties of applications available, but we have a limited bandwidth. So it is better to understand the electromagnetic spectrum before proceeding with the particular application. Say for example, the electromagnetic spectrum start from DC signals to up to even ultra high frequency signal up to 30 gigahertz or 300 gigahertz. So generally the RF signals are lies between the range from 1 gigahertz to few hundred gigahertz. So, okay, in that also we have various of classification, millimeter wave communication, terahertz communication, and many more. So, based on the available electromagnetic spectrum, we can have different frequencies. Few of the frequencies assigned for radio communication. Some of the frequencies are assigned for satellite communication. Some other frequencies arranged for television reception. Some other frequencies may be assigned for communication and so on. So before proceeding with any one particular application, you must aware of that application falls under the which regions of electromagnetic spectrum. By knowing that, probably you cannot interfere with the other system. So the thorough understanding of electromagnetic system is essential before designing any wireless communication system. Actually, this wireless communication system, this communication exists very long before, even it is very during ancient days. Actually, the people are trying to communicate with the smoke, right? Smoke clouds they will be using to transfer one signal from another. Not only that, sometimes they can use even drum sound. In many of the olden days movies, you might have seen that, right? The tribals used to communicate with the drum sound, or maybe with the help of a cloud, smoke, and so on. And after that, they use the pigeon. The pigeon will carry the information from one place to another place. After that, some horse rider carry the information one place to another place. So this communication is not new since the develop. At that time, there is a development in one time to another time. So just I would like to show you some of the important milestone in the process of communication. Let's start with this. In 1864, he only found the theory of electromagnetism. Okay. In 1884, a German physicist Heinrich Rudolf Hertz wrote Maxwell equation in simpler form. Right. 1864, Maxwell's found the theory of electromagnetism. He came up with some 4 equations, but initially Maxwell equations are not 4 equations. It contains 16 to 21 equations. After so many scientists, say, for example, Heinrich Hertz wrote the Maxwell equation in a simpler form. He reduced to 4 to 6 equation. In 1888, first Hertz produced the transmitted and received electromagnetic wave using reflector to concentrate beam. That is, he tried to demonstrate the wireless communication, and it was successful, and it was working from 5 meter to 50 centimeter, 5 centimeter to 50 centimeter. Okay. In 1895, Marconi first transmitted and received a coded message signal at a distance of 1.75 miles near his home in Italy. In 1897, Marconi again demonstrated radio transmission In 1928, the first television broadcasting happened with the help of the scientist called John L. Baird. In 1933, Armstrong demonstrated frequency modulation. Again, during 1936, he invented the FM radio. In 1978, AT&T Bell Labs started testing a mobile telephone system based on cells. 1983, the first cellular AMPS service available in Chicago. So these are all some of the milestones in the wireless communication. In between, there are various activities happen. Just to save the time, I skipped many of the portions. Only I would like to highlight important achievement. Okay. So what is the need of wireless? Why do we go for wireless? So the advantages are communication can reach everywhere, because the thing is the setting up of wireless network is very easy. Say for example, if you want to provide a internet connection to your home, maybe you have in your home some 2-3 rooms. Suppose if you want to give a wired internet connection to 2-3 bedrooms and one hall, so definitely it will take time. Okay, and you have to lay the wires. Okay, so definitely it is a complex one, and it will take more time as well as more cost, right? But at the same time, if you want to establish a wireless connection, simply you can buy one wireless router. That wireless router you can keep it in your room hall, and that wireless router is connected through the wired cable or maybe optical fiber cable from the service provider. Then immediately the entire house will enjoy the wireless communication, right? Your entire house will enjoy the Wi-Fi facility wherever you are there in the first floor, second floor, or bedroom, or wherever you can receive the signal. So the wireless communication can reach everywhere because there is no obstruction, because it does not use any physical connection between the transmitter and the receiver. Not only that, it can save cost and time for installation. It is very easy, and also it does not involve any complex wiring. Suppose if you want to give a wireless LAN connection, not a wireless connection, LAN connection, Ethernet LAN connection, obviously you have to go for a complex wiring. But in the case of wireless, it is not required. And also through wireless, you can connect to multiple devices. Suppose if we have a one LAN cable from the telephone instrument or from the broadband service provider, if it comes to that Ethernet point, only one devices can be connected if it is a wired connection. Okay. If you want to connect one number of devices, you have to take a separate wires for each and every devices. But in the case of wireless communication, it's not required, and many devices can be connected at the same time. Not only that, because of the wireless, you can enjoy the freedom of mobility. You can move everywhere, here and there, but still you can be connected to the internet, or still you can be connected to the external world. So these are all some of the advantages that everybody knows. The limitation means bandwidth. So obviously wireless means it is restricted due to the bandwidth. In the optical fiber cable, you can enjoy a very high speed because it is a physical connection, because there is a dedicated line available for your browsing. So speed will be very high. But if it is a wireless, obviously speed will be less. Not only that, the bandwidth also limited because frequency spectrum is limited. Okay. But bandwidth of optical cable is very high, but compared to the frequency spectrum is limited, so there is a scarcity of spectrum, so bandwidth is also limited. And also there will be a signal loss. Signal loss may be because of the reflection, and there may be obstacles because of the building, wires, trees, tall building. There may be a signal loss in the wireless communication system, and also you will have a channel interference because there are so many wireless signals as practice. There may be some co-channel interference or maybe adjacent channel interference that may be happening. So because of that, you will have a very poor quality of service. But still, the people will go for a wireless communication system because of the advantages, whatever we have discussed. So what are the basic building block of wireless system? So in order to establish a wireless system, definitely you must have one transmitter, right? The transmitter will be taking care of everything. There will be a transducer, and it can convert analog signal into digital signal, and then it will do modulation, power amplification, security features, coding, encoding, everything will be done. Okay, just for simplicity, I'm showing only as one single block, but actually it contains roughly 8 to 10 blocks for various purposes. Okay, so the transmitter will be trying to transmit the information from source point to the destination point. Destination is containing a receiver. Receiver will receive the signal. So in between the channel, wireless channel, free space, normally free space, will be there. But how the transmission of signal can be happen from transmitter to the receiver? Obviously with the help of antenna. We will be going to use one antenna, transmitting antenna for the transmission purpose, and we are going to use the same kind of antenna, receiving antenna, for the reception purpose. So antenna plays a vital role in the case of wireless communication system, because without the antenna, wireless communication is not possible. So antenna is very important to establish any wireless system. So we are going to discuss about what is antenna, what are its various parameters, what is its operating principle. That only we are going to discuss during this another 45 minutes. Antenna. Everybody knows the definition about antenna. Antenna is an electrical device which converts electrical signal into the electromagnetic signals, and also vice versa, because you can use the antenna both for transmitting as well as the reception purpose. An antenna is a structure or a device that will radiate and receive electromagnetic wave. So they are used in both transmitter as well as in receivers. An antenna is basically a metallic object. It often a collection of wire. The electromagnetic waves are polarized according to the position of the antenna. Normally, we will apply the electromagnetic signal, oscillating RF electric signals to the antenna terminal, and the antenna radiates energy from the current as electromagnetic wave, right? So any structure designed to efficiently radiate, receive electromagnetic radiation in a preferred direction, we can call as either transmitting antenna or receiving antenna. So what is the basic structure? So typically an antenna consists of an arrangement of metallic conductors, and they are electrically connected to the receiver or transmitter through the cables or wires. An oscillating current of electrons is forced through the antenna by a transmitter. It will create an oscillating magnetic field around the antenna, while the charge of electrons also creates an oscillating electric field along the filament. These time-varying fields radiate away from the antenna into the space as a moving electromagnetic field, because we all know that the stationary charges will produce magnetic field, right? The moving charges will produce electric field. The time-varying charges only will produce the electromagnetic field. So in order to make any structure, any metallic structure as an antenna, we have to apply the time varying field. Okay. Conversely, during reception, the oscillating electric and magnetic fields of an incoming radio waves are intercepted by the antenna, and then antenna will convert the electromagnetic waves into the, and it will produce the oscillating currents in the antenna. So in a two-way communication, same antenna can be used as a transmitter and receiver. Let's briefly discuss about the radiation mechanism. Any antenna, simple antenna can be constructed with the help of a wire, right? A two wire, they are separated by a small distance, and you are supplying with some source. Remember, this source signal should be an RF signal or time varying signal, right? This is an alternating signal. Okay, it should not be a DC signal plus minus a battery kind of thing. You should not use. You should use the alternating signal, RF signal. Okay, oscillating signal. So suppose if you excite these two wires with the help of a RF signal, what will happen? So in the top conductor, actually the electromagnetic field, right? The magnetic fields will be generated in this direction, clockwise direction, let's say, and the other part of the wire, it will be in the opposite direction. Okay. Suppose if the two wires are very much close with each other, what will happen? On the top conductor carrying the clockwise, or the top conductor is producing the clockwise field, and the bottom conductor is producing the anti-clockwise field. So the both the field will get cancelled with each other, and you won't be having any radiation, no signals coming out from the wire. So what the people try to do is they just try to slightly flare the wire, right? Flare the wire. So while doing that, what you are trying to do is you are just trying to make sufficient distance between the top and bottom conductor. So because of that, the fields are not getting, electromagnetic fields are not getting cancelled. Okay, there may be some amount of signals not cancel with each other. Suppose if you still completely flare out the signal like this, what will happen? there will be a sufficient distance between the two conductor. So the electromagnetic wave can be coming out from the flared structure. So in order to produce the radiation, it is very much essential you have to supply the antenna with the alternating current or alternating signals. Not only that, there should be a sufficient distance between the two conductors, because obviously we need two conductors, right, to transmit any information. Even in the case of battery also, we need two terminals, positive, negative. In the case of AC signal, phase, neutral. So definitely we need two wires to carry the information. So in the case of antenna also, these two wires should be sufficiently separated to avoid the cancellation of electromagnetic field. And at the same time, the wire should fit with the alternating signal. Then the radiation can be coming out from the flat end of the wire, and then provided there is a impedance mismatch between the free space impedance and the antenna impedance, this flaring, the open ended, then automatically the signals are started generating or propagating from antenna end, and it can reach the far end. So this is the simple idea how the radiation is generated in the antenna. And when you coming to the classification of antenna, there are varieties of antenna based on this construction, based on the application, based on the structure. There are many things available. Periodic antenna, bow tie antenna, wire antenna, antenna, and monopole antenna comes under this category. Even loop antenna also comes under the wire antenna category. Traveling wave antenna, we have two different types: helical antenna and Yagi-Uda antenna. And microwave antenna, we can have rectangular microstrip antenna, planar inverted F antenna, and many more. Okay. Reflector antenna, some of the examples are parabolic reflector and cornel reflector. So like that, we have varieties of antenna for various application based on the designer's need, and they can use any one of them. Let's start with the, now we know how, what is the principle behind the operation of the antenna, how the radiations are generated from the antenna, we know that. Then we must understand that what are the important parameters we need to consider while designing an antenna. That is very, very important. Let's start with the far field and near field. So that is the first thing we are going to discuss. The space surrounding an antenna is usually subdivided into three regions. Okay, you can see there are three color different. Suppose you have an antenna, it is a simple dipole antenna. I am showing just for an example, but it could be anything. Okay, so that is a source. You can actually divide this space around an antenna into three different regions. The very first region is called reactive near field. The next region is called as radiating near field, or you can call it as Fresnel region. And the last one is called far field region or Fraunhofer region. So far field region is very, very important because this is the region where we are placing our receiver. So far field region is very important for antenna analysis. These regions are so designated to identify the field structure in each case. Although there is no abrupt changes in the field configuration are noted as the boundaries are crossed, there are distinct differences among them. The boundaries separating these regions are not unique, although there is a various criteria have been established and are commonly used to identify the region. So how to identify this region? Okay, so for that we will start one by one. Say for example, reactive near field. Reactive near field. Okay, the blue color region. Reactive near field region is defined as the portion of the near field region immediately surrounding the antenna wherein the reactive field predominates. Okay, actually in the reactive near field, the reactive fields are actually dominate. For a very short dipole, a equivalent radiator, The outer boundary is commonly taken to exist at a distance of lambda by 2 pi from the antenna surface. So when you can say the antenna is at reactive near field, say for example r is the distance from the antenna, r is the distance from the antenna, and d is the largest dimension of the antenna. So for reactive near field, the r should be less than 0.62 times square root 0.62 times root of d3 by lambda. Lambda is the frequency of operation and d is the largest dimension. So up to that you will have a reactive near field. Next, coming to the radiation near field. Radiation near field lies between 0.62 times of square root of d3 by d cube by lambda greater than and less than 2d square by lambda. Radiating near field region is called as Fresnel region. It is defined as the region of the field of an antenna between the reactive near field region and the far field region, wherein the radiation fields predominate and wherein the angular field distribution is dependent upon the distance from the antenna. If the antenna has a maximum dimension that is not large compared to the wavelength, this region may not exist. For example, for an antenna focused at infinity, the radiating near field region is sometimes referred as the Fresnel region on the basis of analogy to the optical terminology. If the antenna has a maximum overall dimension, which is very small compared to the wavelength, this field region may not exist. Actually, this criterion is based on a maximum phase error of pi by 8. Next, coming to the far field region, this region is called as Fraunhofer region. It is defined as the region of the field of an antenna where the angular
Karthikeyan sir, please unmute. You are muted.
okay. Okay, sorry.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Am I audible now? Right. Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
So in the reactive near field region, the pattern is more spread out and nearly uniform with slight variation. But if you look at the radiating near field, the pattern begins to smooth and form radiation lobe. But the exact radiation pattern you can observe at the far field region. The pattern is very well formed and they are usually consisting of major lobe and minor lobe. So far field region is one of the important region where only you can understand the exact radiation properties of the given antenna. Next, we start with one more parameter called radiation intensity. Then we'll move on to radiation pattern because there is a relationship between radiation intensity and radiation pattern. Normalized EM power density, that will be independent of the distance from the antenna is usually called as far field. From the radiation intensity, we must know how much power is radiated by the antenna in a particular direction, especially in the far field region. So we can define radiation intensity in a given direction as the power radiated from an antenna per unit solid angle. In mathematical form, simply it can be represented as U equal to R square W radiated, where WR is nothing but the radiated power from the antenna, and U is the radiation intensity, and R is the distance from the antenna from where you are looking the intensity. So, in order to mathematically describe the radiation intensity with respect to direction, normally we need two different angles, one in the azimuth direction, another one in the elevation. Azimuth direction angle is denoted by phi and an elevation angle is denoted by theta. So when you look at the figure, when you want to know what is the radiation intensity at the observing point, I must know what is theta and what is phi. Based on that, I can calculate how much is the radiation intensity. Okay. So this is only for particular point. But I want to introduce the one more parameter called radiation pattern. From the radiation pattern, we have an information about how an antenna radiate energy in the free space. In what pattern? Suppose if you throw a energy into the free space, how the radiation, how the electromagnetic energy is spread across the region. That you must know. So for that, radiation pattern is normally, and radiation pattern or antenna pattern is defined as a mathematical function or a graphical representation of the radiation properties of the antenna as a function of space coordinate. In most cases, radiation pattern is determined in the far field region and is represented as a function of directional coordinate. Radiation properties include power flux density, radiation intensity. We can know what is the field strength, what is the directivity, what is the phase or polarization in the antenna. So radiation pattern will provide a lot of information about the antenna characteristic. So one must understand radiation pattern in a better way that can help them to design an antenna of the desired requirement to create the different radiation pattern. Because maybe in the upcoming lectures, you are going to learn about the beam forming, how to generate the radiation patterns of different type. So for that, this concept will be very, very helpful. Unless otherwise, if you don't understand the radiation pattern, then you can't get the concept. So the radiation property of most concern is the 2 or 3 dimensional spatial distribution of radiated energy as a function of the observer position along the path or surface of constant radius. So in order to plot this radiation pattern, we are going to use the two angular space coordinate theta and phi respectively. Actually, there are different type of radiation pattern. Now everybody understood what is radiation pattern. There are different type of radiation patterns are available. Okay, say for example, based on their structure, we can call this as isotropic radiation pattern, or maybe we can call the isotropic antenna. What is isotropic antenna? Isotropic antenna will radiate equal in all direction. So the radiation, isotropic radiation pattern is nothing but it is having equal radiation in all direction. But in practical, having an isotropic radiator is impossible. It is only imaginary because it is not possible to physically realize the isotropic radiator. But this can be very much useful for comparison with the designed antenna. So if you look at the isotropic pattern, you can imagine it's looking like a sphere. So when you are at the center of the sphere, you can see you are at the equal, you are standing in the center of the sphere from the equal distance from the surface of the sphere, right? That means the sphere is having equal amount of radiation. So isotropic radiation pattern can take the form of the sphere, but it is not physically realizable. Next, when you come into the directional radiation pattern, okay, in directional radiation pattern, you can have a maximum amount of energy through only in the particular direction. Say for example, directional antenna radiate or receive more effectively in some direction, and they will radiate very less in the other direction. So the well-known example is the directional antenna. The directional antenna radiation pattern is shown in the figure. You can see that in the isotropic antenna pattern, it is having equal amount of radiation in all the direction, 360 degree in either way. But in the case of directional antenna, the maximum amount of radiation is only on the right hand side, but on the left hand side, there is less amount of radiation. That means the antenna is radiating or focusing only in one direction. In other direction, it is radiating less. What is mean by omnidirectional? It is a sub-classification. Omnidirectional antenna. Omnidirectional antenna is directional in elevation and non-directional in azimuth. For example, in omnidirectional antenna, it is directional in one location and non-directional in other location. Okay. So when you look at the omnidirectional antenna, this is the omnidirectional antenna, just like a cycle tube, right? So it is having directional elevation, but non-directional in azimuth. Okay. So these things can be considered with the help of one simple example. Suppose you are just standing in the shores of standing on the shore of a simple one small pond, okay, or maybe it may be in a even swimming pool also. Suppose if you throw a stone into the swimming pool, what will happen? The waves started from that location from where you put the stone, and then they start try to reach the and they start propagating and try to reach the shores of the swimming pool or shores of the pond. So you can consider this omnidirectional antenna is just similar to that. And directional antenna is say for example a torch light. Okay, so in the torch light, suppose if you are focusing it, the light will be mainly the light will flow in the form of a beam, and that is only on the front side of the torch light. On the back side towards you there is no light. Okay, so it is focusing in the forward direction, not in the backward direction. So depends on the application. Sometimes you can choose the directional antenna, sometimes you can choose the antenna which is having a broader bandwidth, or it can radiate more at the other direction. So radiation pattern is nothing but it is a normalized radiation pattern. It can be available in two different types. Either it may be in a polar plot or it may be a rectangular plot. And at the same time, sometimes you can use the linear plot or sometimes you can use the logarithmic plot. But logarithmic plot is mostly preferred for plotting the radiation pattern of an antenna. As I told you already, from the radiation pattern, you can measure or know about what is the power flux density, radiation density, field strength, directivity, and many more. So the preferable coordinate useful for plotting the radiation pattern is okay. So they will have theta plane, XYZ plane, and so we have a three different quantities. So spherical coordinate is very much useful for plotting the radiation pattern. They have R component, pi component, and theta component. As I told you already, the radiation pattern can be either plotted in polar form or it can be plotted in rectangular form. So when you look at the polar form, it will give the all the quantities, main beams. I will come later. What are those beams? What are those lobes and all? But the only difference is in the case of polar plot, we are going to use theta and pi. But in the case of rectangular plot, we are going to use pi and the intensity. Okay. So depends upon your convenience or the interpretation. You can use any one type of representation. It is up to you. So in the case of radiation pattern also, there are two different types. One is E-plane radiation pattern, another one is H-plane radiation pattern. Because in the case of electromagnetic wave, we know that E and H components are orthogonal with each other, and also they are orthogonal to the direction of propagation. Okay, so sometimes we may be looking into that how the E-plane is H components are radiated, how the E-plane components are radiated. So it is better we can have the both type of representation. In order to understand E-plane radiation pattern and H-plane radiation pattern, you just consider the radiation pattern of a dipole which is shown in the figure. It is a omnidirectional antenna, omnidirectional radiation pattern. Okay, so suppose if you want to know how the electric fields are distributed, so for that you need to cut this radiation pattern in the YZ direction. YZ direction. Okay, YZ direction. You take a piece of you just assume there is a one knife that is in the plane of YZ, you are cutting it. Okay, so if you are cutting in the YZ plane, actually the theta correspond to the direction is actually 90 degree. So if you cut this, you can have a eight-shaped radiation pattern. It's like a donut, right? Okay, so if you cut the donut in the YZ direction, if donut is on your plate and you are trying to cut the donut using a knife in the YZ direction, that is the direction which is perpendicular to your plate, then you can see this kind of eight-shaped circle. So the electric field is distributed in this manner. If you slice the 3D radiated pattern in YZ plane, you will have the E-plane radiation pattern. Okay. Similarly, suppose if you slice your radiation pattern or slice your down out in the direction parallel to your plate in the horizontal direction, in the XY plane, you will be having a circular shape. If you look from the top, you will have a circular shape. So the pi value corresponding to the horizontal plane is nothing but 0 degree, and theta lies between 0 to 180 degree. So you can have a two different type of radiation pattern, one for H field. When you want to know about H field distribution, you should do a cut in the YZ plane. If you want to know about the H field radiation pattern, you need to do the cut in the XY plane. Then you can have a clear understanding how the electric and magnetic fields are distributed in free space or in the far field region. As I told you already, the three-dimensional plot may be of either radiation pattern may be of either two-dimensional plot or 3D plot. Okay, so this is a two-dimensional plot. Already we know that this is a three-dimensional plot. Okay, and also the same radiation pattern you can plot in the either linear or maybe in the dB scale, whatever it is, based on the requirement and convenient. You can go for any one type of representation. As I told you already, both the graph you can use for example, the radiation pattern plotted in polar form and the radiation pattern plotted in rectangular form, both are equal. Just to have a clear understanding, I am just placing it on the same axis, and you can have whatever the major lobe here also it occupies the same, and side lobes are there. The every quantity whatever here you are seeing like half power beamwidth, full first null beamwidth, everything it is present in the rectangular plot also. So this plot will give you some clear interpretation about the magnitudes and power. Okay. Right. Next, just we are going to discuss about what are the different load present in the between the two adjacent radiating regions. Say for example, this is the radiation pattern. Okay, this gray color actually represents the radiation region, right? This is the radiation region. This small one is radiation region. This is the radiation region. This is the radiation, and so on, right? So between two adjacent radiating region, there exists a very low radiating region called null. These are called null, right? This is one radiating region, and this is one radiating region. And between the two radiating region, please look at the mouse movement. There is a region where no radiation exists. Actually, that is called null. So region between actually two null is called low. This is a low. There are two low, two nulls within that region is called low. So between two adjacent radiating region, there exists a very low radiating region called null. The region between two null is called low, right? The lobe associated with the peak radiation is actually called the main lobe. So from the graph, we can understand that this is the lobe which is having very high magnitude. Then this lobe can be called as the major lobe. The lobe associated with the peak radiation is called main lobe. The other lobes are called as the side lobe. The major lobe is pointing in the theta equal to 0 degree direction. In some of the antenna, such as split beam antenna, there may exist more than one more major lobe also. Okay, next coming to the minor lobe. A minor lobe is a lobe except the major lobe, and all the lobe with the exception of the major can be called as minor lobe. This is the major lobe, then all other lobes, all are collectively called as minor lobe. Minor lobe usually represent radiation in an undecided direction and they should be minimized. When you throw the electromagnetic energy, some of the region it is actually required, in some other region actually it is not required, though those regions may be considered as a unwanted region or undecided direction, and the radiation in the undecided direction should be minimized. A side lobe is a radiation lobe in any direction other than the intended lobe. Usually a side lobe is adjacent to the main lobe and occupies a hemisphere in the direction of main beam. Side lobes are normally the largest minor lobe. You can see that in the side lobe, in the minor lobe, there are some of the lobe, their magnitude is very small, and some of the lobe, their magnitude is greater than the minor but smaller than the major lobe. So those lobes can be called as the minor lobe. Another one important lobe is called as a back lobe. A back lobe is a radiation lobe which exists exactly 180-degree opposite to the major lobe. Usually, it refers to the minor lobe that occupies the hemisphere in a direction opposite to the major lobe. So, by looking at the radiation pattern, you can come to the conclusion what are the regions they are receiving maximum amount of energy, what are the regions they are receiving some minimum amount of energy, whether any energy is wasted or not, how to improve this radiation pattern, and many things you will come to know that. So normally we want to reduce the radiation enough energy less in the unwanted regions of the now. Okay. Next, there are some 2-3 parameters which will give more insight into the radiation pattern called beam width. Okay. So first quantity is called as half power beam width. It is the angular separation in which the magnitude of the radiation pattern decreases by 50% or 0.707 times of the maximum radiation. Okay. So from the figure probably you can see that just to go back to let me explain with the help of a figure. So this is the half power beam, right? Okay. So this is the point where the peak radiation or maximum value of power is there. So when the power of the major lobe reduced to 50% of the maximum value, the distance between the adjacent 50% point is called half power beamwidth, or this power is less than 3 dB, or in other words 0.707 times of the maximum energy, whatever it is, you can take it in a either way. So half power beamwidth will tell you. Okay. Next, the first null beamwidth. It is the angular separation from which the magnitude of the radiation pattern decreases to 0 or away from the main beam. Okay. Another one is called the front to back ratio. The front to back ratio is the ratio between the radiated flux density from the center of the major lobe to the radiated flux density from the center of the back lobe. So front to back ratio is very, very important. It should be high because it gives the radiation between the flux density of the center of the major lobe and how much flux density is on the back side of the major lobe, that is nothing but back lobe. So front to back ratio of the antenna should be very high. Suppose if front to back ratio is high, that means the antenna is more directive. Next, coming to the side lobe level SLL, the ratio between the side lobe magnitude and main lobe magnitude is called as side lobe level. Normally we must maintain a very low side lobe level. By maintaining very low side lobe level, you can ensure that the receiver antenna or the antenna is throwing more energy into the desired direction rather than the unwanted direction. So we would like to keep the SLL side lobe level as low as possible. Okay. So next, coming to the antenna gain. From the antenna gain, we can understand that how much power is transmitted in the direction of peak radiation to the top and isotropic. So actually antenna gain is nothing but just a comparison. In comparison with the isotropic radiator, you know that the isotropic radiator will radiate equally in all directions. So with respect to the isotropic radiator, how much amount of power is transmitted in the particular direction. So antenna gain is more commonly quoted than directivity in an antenna specification sheet because it takes into account the actual loss that occurs during transmission. Say for example, if you have a transmitting antenna with a gain of 3 dB, what is the meaning? How much power is received from far from the antenna will be nothing but 3 dB greater than the power received from a lossless isotropic antenna with the same input power. Suppose if you want to say an antenna is having a gain of 5 dB mean that 5 dB actually what it tells is your antenna is receiving a 5 dB power more than the isotropic antenna if it is fed with the same input power. Okay, so gain is nothing but a comparison with the isotropic antenna gain. The gain can be measured in the unit of gain is in different, maybe in different paper you might have seen different thing. One of the basic unit used for mentioning gain is nothing but dB, decibels. As we have been discussing, 10 dB means nothing but 10 times the energy is relative to the isotropic antenna in the peak direction of radiation. Suppose if it is 3 dB, it is 3 times energy is related to an isotropic antenna in the peak direction of radiation. Next, coming to the dBA. dBA is nothing but decibels with respect to the isotropic antenna. dBA, decibels related to the isotropic antenna. This is same as dB, as we have seen using it. 3 dBA means it is twice the power related to an isotropic antenna in the peak direction. Some people might have used the unit of dBd, that is decibels relative to the dipole antenna. Note that we know the half-wave length dipole antenna has a gain of 2.15 dBi. Hence, 7.85 dBd means the peak gain is 7.85 dB higher than the dipole antenna. That is, it is 10 dB greater than the isotropic antenna gain. Therefore, the gain of an antenna you can reference to an isotropic radiator is the gain reference to a half-wave dipole antenna plus 2.15 dB. So, if you want to mention gain in dBA in terms of dBd, it should be added with the 2.15 dB because dipole antenna gain is 2.15 dB. So, you can represent the gain in either way it is convenient for you or better for understanding, you can do that. Very simply, gain is nothing but the comparison between the gain of an isotropic antenna with respect to the given antenna. That is very important. So you can mention either in terms of dBA or you can mention in terms of dBd. So with this diagram, maybe you can have a clear understanding to have an ideal isotropic radiator. Okay, this ideal isotropic radiator radiate equally in all directions. The next one, blue color one, is nothing but the radiation pattern of half-wave dipole. Half-wave dipole radiation pattern is like egg-shaped pattern, but you know that half-wave dipole is more directive than the isotropic radiator because only in this horizontal direction it is having more radiation. Okay, so suppose the practical antenna, suppose if it is having a radiation pattern like this, then you can represent either gain of the antenna in dBA or gain of the antenna in dBd. If you want to mention the gain of the antenna in dBd, you have to add plus 2.15. Okay. So you have to remember the gain is nothing but a comparison. That is very important. Next, coming to the directivity, it is having the close relation with the gain also. Directivity of an antenna is generally defined as the ratio of the radiation intensity in a given direction from the antenna to the radiation intensity averaged over all directions. So directivity and directive gain both are interrelated. The average radiation intensity is equal to the total power radiated by the antenna divided by the 4 pi. You can represent this directivity mathematically in terms of D equal to U by U naught, where U is the radiation intensity and U naught is the radiation intensity of isotropic source and P radiation is nothing but total radiated power. If the direction is not specified, generally you can consider the direction of maximum radiation intensity instead of given thing. So the maximum radiation intensity is given as D max equal to D naught equal to U max by U naught. So depends on the antenna, it may vary. What is the directivity? I told you already, there is a relationship between directivity and directive gain. So directive gain is nothing but the ratio of radiation intensity in a given direction to the radiation intensity average over all direction, as we have already seen it. Okay. So directivity is nothing but it is the value of directive gain, the direction in which the radiation is maximum. So sometimes don't get confused with that. Sometimes the people can use it in terms of directive gain or directivity. So you can use according to the requirement. Next, coming to the antenna efficiency. Efficiency is very important because antenna is a system through which you are trying to convert your electric signal into electromagnetic signal. So we must know how good the conversion is taken place. Suppose if you are how much out of how much power is radiated out of the transmitted power, that you want to know that. So it is a ratio between the radiated power and transmitted power. The antenna efficiency can be written as a low efficiency antenna has most of the power absorbed as lossless within the antenna. So it is a ratio between the radiated power and transmitted power. So it is a I'm audible now, participant. Sorry for the inconvenience. I did not notice my voice is audible or not. Okay, thank you. Okay. So next one important parameter you should understand is polarization. The polarization of an antenna is defined as the polarization of the EM wave. It radiates in the far field. Okay. The electromagnetic wave generally radiated by the antenna is a mixture of electric and magnetic field. If we were tracked to the curve traced by the dip of the electric field vector in some fixed location in space, we would get as time varies as a curve referred to as the polarization. Suppose in the case of horizontal polarization, if it is linear polarization, you consider either electric or magnetic field vector. So generally we prefer the electric field vector. Suppose if the electric field vector direction is in parallel with the direction of propagation. Like okay, so direction of propagation is from left to right. So now the orientation of the electric field vector is parallel to the direction of propagation. It is called a horizontal polarization. But if you look at the electric field vector here, the electric field vector is actually vertical to the direction of propagation. So it is called as vertical polarization. But in some of the cases, actually, the electric field vector orientation is going to be continuously varied. Either it rotates in the clockwise direction or it may be rotated in the anti-clockwise direction. So these two kind of polarization is called as circular polarization. If it is in the anti-clockwise, it is called a left-hand circular polarization. If it is in the clockwise, it can be called as a right-hand. But that is a confusion many people used to have, that whether it is a right hand or left hand, that depends on that whether you are referring with respect to the source or whether you are referring with respect to the receiving antenna. The very simple thing is you have to use the right hand rule. If you use the right hand rule, then the given polarization is left hand polarization. If it is a right hand rule, then it's a right hand polarization. So it may be differ from if you book to book, or maybe if you look at some of the website, it may be giving some confusing thing. But one thing you should remember is whether if you want to say whether the wave is left hand circular polarization or right hand circular portion, that depends upon whether from which point you are looking, whether you are looking at the observing point or whether with respect to the source you are saying. That is very important. Okay, so you can have some videos, you can internet, you please go through it later. You can have a clear understanding of video. I don't have enough time to play. Okay, so I think another some 10 minutes probably I can finish it, because already it is 11:50. 1:50. Okay. So hope you understand what is polarization. So if suppose if we design an antenna, the horizontal polarized antenna should be communicated with the horizontal polarized antenna. Similarly, the vertically polarized antenna should be antenna. That is very important. So if there is any mismatch between the polarization across the transmitting and receiving antenna, then the transmission or communication won't be that much good. So it's how to generate this circularly polarized radiation, that is very important. So for that you need to know in order to generate a circular polarization, the electric field must have a two orthogonal component. That is, those component EX and EY component should be perpendicular to with each other, and also the E field ortho component must have the equal magnitude. Not only that, it has to satisfy the one more criteria called as the orthogonal component must be 90° out of phase. Okay. So once these conditions satisfied, then you can very easily generate the circularly polarized waveform. So for example, you know that the time harmonic E field can be represented as Ex and Uy. There is no component in the Z direction, that is the direction of propagation. And you assume that the magnitude Ex and Uy both are same, and the phase difference you can consider as pi equal to pi y minus pi x, nothing but the difference between the y component and x component. And if you substitute in this equation, and if you provide different values of between 0 to 2 pi, you can see that the local of the electric field is straight line, and therefore we can call this wave as a linear polarized wave. That is, either you will have a Ey component, or either you will have a Ex component. So if you are having only Ey component, it is called vertical polarization. If you have only Ex component, it is called horizontal polarization. Okay, right. Suppose if you just assume you have this expression and the pi should be now plus 90 degree, right? The phase component, the phase difference between the orthogonal component must be plus 90 degree. Now what will happen? So if you apply for different values of omega t plus, and it varies from 0 to 2 pi, now the locus of the electric field is a circle traced in clockwise direction. This figure is nothing but while showing the equal. Okay, so you can have both circular polarization as well as there are two classification: right circular polarized wave and left circular polarized wave. Right. In addition to that, suppose you can have, there is a variation between the major and minor axis. That is, when Ex and Ey components are sorry, Ex and Ey components magnitudes are not same. They are going to vary in magnitude. Then what will happen? Then you can get the elliptical polarization. Instead of circular polarization, you can have the elliptical polarization. That means the locus of the electric field will form the ellipse shape. So how do you understand that the given antenna is producing elliptical polarization or circular polarization? So for that, the one more important parameter is taken into account, that is called axial ratio. So axial ratio is nothing but the ratio between the major axis and minor axis of the electric field component. So by calculating that, and if it is less than 3 dB, normally axial ratio is 0 dB, the antenna is perfectly circularly polarized, but normally we consider only 3 dB, that is 70.7% circular polarization. So if axial ratio is less than 3 dB, we can consider the antenna is having the circular polarization. So while investigating the circularly polarized antenna, you must know about the two terms called cross polarization and copolarization. So what is copolarization? Say for example, if in the copolarization, that depends on the desired radiation pattern of the antenna. Suppose if you design an antenna which is horizontally polarized, then copolarized component is horizontally polarized. Then what is cross polarization? Cross polarization is exactly opposite or orthogonal to the copolarization. In our case, our copolarization is horizontal, then cross polarization will be vertical. So from the cross polarization and copolarization component, what do we understand is how much amount of the signal is antenna is radiating in the intended direction, and it is okay. Suppose from the cross polarization component, we know how much the antennas in the perform. Okay, right. So while investigating polarization, cross polarization and copolarization component is very important. That will give us an idea what is the desired quantity and what is the undesired quantity. We come to know that. The another one important and the last one is polarization loss factor. This is very, very important. In general, the polarization of the receiving antenna will not be same as the polarization of the incoming wave. Definitely there will be a mismatch. Actually, this mismatch is called as polarization mismatch. The amount of power extracted by the antenna from the incoming signal will not be maximum if there is any polarization loss present. So, with the help of polarization loss factor, we can come to the conclusion how good our antenna is receiving the input signal. Assuming that the electric field of the incoming wave and antenna can be written as EA equal to rho cap EA, similarly rho A EA, where EA is the incident power and then EA is the antenna power and rho is the unit vector. So power loss ratio is nothing but the multiplication of these two vectors. The two vector is nothing but cos pi pi c square, where phi p is the angle between the two unit vectors. Okay, suppose what is the effect of this power loss ratio factor? From the next diagram you will understand. So this is the effect of the power loss ratio. So you have the antenna polarization factor, unit vector from the wave, unit vector of the antenna. If both antennas are matched, both the antenna as well as the incident wave vector, both are matched, then there will be a perfect reception because they are aligned with each other. Suppose if there is a misalignment, based on that angle, there will be a signal loss and the antenna may not be efficiently extracting the received signal. So suppose if it is 90°, then exact mismatch, complete mismatch, the amount of energy received from the third diagram is very, very low. Second diagram is little bit lower than the first one, but greater than the third one. But in the first case, exactly your antenna will receive the signal. So if power loss ratio is 1, then we can say that the antenna is, sorry, not a power loss ratio, it is a polarization loss factor. If polarization loss factor is 1, then we can say that there is a efficient extraction of energy from the free space to the antenna. Okay, next coming to the last one, envelope correlation coefficient. This is also very, very important. Suppose nowadays the people are working in MIMO antennas, right? Multiple input, multiple output antenna. Suppose if we have 2 or 3 more antenna, in order to understand the diversity between the antenna, how without interruption one antenna will receive the signal from the other one. So the diversity performance will be evaluated with the help of envelope correlation coefficient. Just I need to rush up because already 1:15, so that's why. Suppose if you are using the multiple input, multiple antenna, you have a radio capable of transmitting and receiving multiple data streams simultaneously, and also you need more than one antenna. So in order to improve the throughput, normally you are going for the multiple input, multiple output antenna. Suppose if we use the diversity concept, the one antenna performance must not disturb the other antenna performance. You must have the good isolation. So if you construct any MIMO antenna with the good isolation, that indirectly will make the ECC very less. Normally the ECC should be less than 0.5. Then you can say that the antenna is having a good correlation coefficient. That is, one antenna performance must not affect the other antenna performance. So especially if you are making the antenna which is capable of either receiving RHCP as well as LHCP, then there should be a difference between those two things. Suppose if the RHCP antenna will not receive the LHCP and vice versa. If they started receiving, then there will be a confusion and you will not get the original signal. So in order to ensure that, you have to verify that whether it is a single antenna, but if it is having a multiple field, or even multiple antenna having the multiple fields, whatever it is, if you are designing, you must ensure that the ECC should be very low. Then only you can ensure that there is a better space diversity among the antenna. Okay, so this is one of the important factor, mainly useful for multiple feed antenna or multiple input, multiple output antenna. This parameter may not be good for an antenna which is having single port. An antenna impedance, this is very known to everyone. So before going for any antenna design, you must do some impedance matching. So the antenna impedance matches with the antenna. Then only there is a effective amount of power transfer from signal source to the antenna, then antenna will radiate perfectly. So in order to do the perfect impedance matching, you must know the antenna input impedance. Normally this impedance is presented by an antenna input terminals of the ratio of voltage to the current at a pair of input terminal. The ratio of appropriate component of the electric to magnetic field also will give the antenna impedance. And Frisk formula, this is the last one, at least 5 minutes late, just let me conclude it quickly. Frisch transmission formula. So Frisch transmission formula is one of the important formula used in antenna design. Why do we design an antenna? Because if you want to transfer signal from one place to another place. So after you designing a communication system, you must know that how good the signal is transferred from transmitted to the receiver. So for that, this Frisch transmission formula will be very much useful. Once you know the transmitter antenna gain, receiver antenna gain, and also how much distance is between the transmitter and the receiver, and how much amount of power you are transmitting from transmitter to the receiver, you will be able to calculate what is the effective power transfer. So for that, this formula may be useful. So PR by PT equal to, PR is nothing but a received power, receiver power, PT is a transmitted power, lambda is a frequency, R is the distance between the transmitter and receiver, and GT, GR are the transmitter antenna gain and receiver antenna gain. So from this, what do you understand is, suppose if the frequency is very high, right? Because lambda equal to C by F, there is an inverse relation. Suppose if the frequency is very high, normally there will be a more attenuation in the signal happen because the received power will be very less. So there is a inverse relationship between the received power by the antenna with respect to the frequency. Suppose if you design, so that's why most of the cellular systems and Bluetooth, wireless, Wi-Fi, those are operating in the lower frequency. Suppose if you increase the frequency, because of the propagation loss, the received signal will be very less. So that's why the millimeter wave communication like 60 GHz and other high communication, actually the people will not prefer for the cell phone. Even though nowadays for 5G they are using it, because the reason is, in the case of 5G, actually we are going to have the more number of transmitting stations with the less power. So the power loss will be very less. But if you use it high power for a long distance communication, obviously the power loss will be more. So from the Frisch transmission formula, one can understand that maybe it will give a rough idea about what is the frequency, suitable frequency they can choose it based on the distance between the transmitter and receiver. So if you go for a very high frequency for long distance communication, obviously the power loss will be very less. So this information, actually you can get it from the Frisch transmission formula. Maybe the other parameters also there. I just skipped out aperture area, RCS. It is very, very important while designing the radar cross section, and effective isotropic radiator power, and mean effective gain, and many more. So these parameters, just I leave it to your choice. But especially related to 5G antenna, the beam forming and radiation pattern terms are very, very important. So how to switch the beam and how to tune the beam from one location to another location, and how to evaluate the receiver power and all. Maybe you can use your AI or machine learning process, and you can improve the antenna performance. And I hope so. Many of the things are already known to you. At least this 1 hour lecture will give an opportunity to just brush up your basic fundamentals in antenna. So probably if any quick questions, maybe I can reply it. Otherwise, you can leave for lunch. So sorry for delaying it by 25. How much it is? 15 minutes. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your fruitful lecture on antenna basics and fundamental parameters, sir. The audience would definitely gain knowledge on this topic because sir started from communication system basics, history and milestone of communication systems, basic antenna radiation mechanism, antenna types, and up to antenna parameters. Sir gave a clear-cut explanation about each and every fundamental antenna parameters. Thank you, sir. Now the participants can ask your questions.
You can feel free to interact with me, or else maybe you can mail me also. Suppose everybody is in a rush to go for lunch, you can just mail me also personally if you have any doubt.
Participants can post your queries in chat box also.
Mail will be better, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you one and all for giving me an opportunity, and thank you for listening at the odd time. So 12 to 1:30, maybe your lunch may be delayed by 15 minutes. Sorry for that. So still, if you have any queries, probably you can mail me. I'm ready to clarify your doubt. But I don't think so. Most of the things I have covered are only fundamental thing. But still, if you have any doubt, maybe you can mail me. So thank you for the organizer. So thank you for the participant for their patience listening my lecture. So thank you.